Well, after 58 laps, we finally have a result in the third race of the 2023 Formula One season. And what a Grand Prix. The 26th running of the Australian Grand Prix here at Melbourne was, for my money, one of the best we have ever seen here. And while we may be coming to you about an hour later than we were expecting to, we wouldn't leave you high and dry without your post-race show. Welcome to the paddock here in Melbourne with me, Will Bucks. I'm delighted to be joined by Pietro Fittipaldi, Haas F1 team's reserve driver. And Pietro, we finally have a result. What a crazy race. I don't know how we're going to be able to go through everything, but we will do our level best to get everybody up to speed with everything that happened, why and how it happened. But Max Verstappen, another race victory for him. The first time in Red Bull's history that they've won the opening 3 races of the season, and he looked superb.
Yeah, I mean, once the 2 Mercedes got by him on the start, I actually thought Mercedes had a real shot at winning the race, but Max stayed at it, was able to recover the first, and then even after the red flag restart, held the, P1 and won another race. So
this is the thing, because we're kind of used to Max Verstappen getting pole positions, disappearing off into the distance. It wasn't like that today. The Mercedes, I think to the surprise of everybody in this paddock, possibly most of all even to Mercedes themselves, had the pace. They led the race. They had a 1-2 at one point. George Russell led the race at one point. Lewis Hamilton led the race at one point, but in the end, Max Verstappen just too powerful. Yeah,
they're just a bit too powerful. I mean, Mercedes definitely made a step, but still missing a little bit to the Red Bulls. I mean, everybody is. And also Lewis was really, really strong today. Yeah. Even in the beginning of the race, he was putting pressure on George, was going to overtake George. So I think he really kind of is more in the groove with the Mercedes car.
We got into a groove, as you said, during the Grand Prix with Verstappen leading, with Lewis Hamilton behind him. George Russell ended up having a power unit failure and dropping out of the Grand Prix. Fernando Alonso sitting in third, pushing on towards Lewis. A lovely train of cars behind with Carlos Sainz, Pierre Gasly, Lance Stroll, all pushing up then onto the back of that fight too. But it was a crash, actually for your teammate, Kevin Magnussen, in the dying laps of the race, which brought out another, at the time it was the second red flag of the day, ended up having 3 as things went on, that gave us a standing restart with 2 laps of racing left to run. And what we saw from that was chaos.
It was chaos, but honestly, I love the standing restarts. I know people don't like it, but I love the standing restarts. I think it makes it exciting. I think it makes it fun. And anyways, it was a shame for Haas. I think we would have had our first podium if they would have counted the final result after the red flag restart, but they went to the lap before.
Yeah, and that was everything that we saw today, and the guys said it on commentary, it was all correct to the book. What the FIA did today was absolutely to the book in terms of what we need to see. And it called to mind what happened at Silverstone last year. The whole field hadn't come through that first sector, and so because of that, they went back to the restart order. But it couldn't be the full restart order because the 2 Alpines had gone out, Sargent was out, De Vries was out. So much going on at that restart.
Yeah, so I mean, as you said, it went to the book, but it's such a shame for Haas. I know the whole team, obviously we were happy with the P7 at the end, but it would have been the first podium because Sainz got a 5-second penalty. It would have been the first podium for Haas and the first podium for Nico Hülkenberg. Yeah. So that would have been an amazing story. It was just getting to the first sector.
I didn't even think about that. Yes, Carlos Sainz for causing that collision with Fernando Alonso down at turn 1-2, was given a 5-second penalty. He was in floods of tears in the car. I've never heard Carlos like that over the radio. For these guys, and you know only too well what it is to race for this long, to be pushing for 2 hours and a half, and then on that last one lap that you're just going to have to run around and bring the thing home behind the safety car to be told, yeah, you're not going to finish 4th. You're actually going to finish out of the points. How soul-destroying, how soul-crushing must that be?
It's terrible. And the worst thing is when you get a 5-second, 10-second penalty and you're finishing the race on their safety car, because that obviously groups everybody up. If there was at least 1 or 2 laps of racing, you're able to maybe just lose 1 or 2 spots because you open up a gap and then you lose whatever, the 5 seconds, whoever's behind you. But everybody's bunched up in safety car, then there's nothing you can do.
Nothing you can do. Carlos Sainz, I saw him just walk past a little bit earlier, I'm sure, to go and try and plead his case to the stewards. Whether that will fall on deaf ears or not, we will find out. But for now, Carlos Sainz finishes out of the points on a day where Ferrari certainly for one car at least, and we'll get into what happened to Charles Leclerc later, for one car at least, looked to be having their strongest day of the season so far. Right now, Carlos Sainz leaves with 0 points.
Hey, Carlos, what are your thoughts on that 5-second time penalty?
Sorry, right now I cannot talk. I'm too angry, too disappointed, I just cannot say anything. I prefer to go to stewards, get the penalty away, because I don't think I deserve it, and it's the most unfair penalty I've seen in my life. So I will go first to stewards and then come by. I just need to come to a TV pen, because if I don't come, they put me another penalty. So.
Up until that point, though...
Sorry, I prefer not to talk. Okay. I'll come back later after going to stewards.
Okay.
Thank you. Good of Carlos to go and actually talk to the media and say, I've come because I have to, but I'm going to go and see the stewards. Now, for your money, did Carlos deserve that 5-second penalty?
It's a difficult situation because, I mean, you do the start. You have cold tires, kind of, because you've been waiting here on the pit lane for so long. You go straight out, you do the start, and then everybody's racing hard. And yeah, I don't know if he overshot. I mean, you have low grip on that first lap, slid up and ended up hitting Alonso, I believe. But then at the end, it didn't really matter because they went to the lap before and Alonso still had the position, So he was the one that got massively affected because then they restarted on their safety car, or they finished on their safety car, and then he went back from wherever he was 4th to 11th or something. So it's a tough situation. I think for the start, yeah, he deserved it because he overshot it and took out Alonso. But then at the end, they went to the previous lap.
But of course, they went to the previous lap and the Alpines couldn't start, and they got caught out in all of that mess as well. Gasly actually got very close to hitting Alonso on that restart too, but as he rejoined the track, Esteban Ocon alongside him just didn't see each other. They're in the wall, they're out of the race too. They've got to go and see the stewards for making contact. A nightmare end to the day for Alpine, with Pierre Gasly looking like he would be 4th, 5th place today.
Yeah, they were really strong, and I think I don't know if Gasly, just on the start, sometimes it's so hard. You're looking always ahead, and I think he had kind of a bad start. Was trying to avoid what happened there with Alonso and Sainz, and then he just kind of squeezed Ocon by accident on the wall. Then bam,
And the sun in their eyes at that point as well. One man who I don't think will be too unhappy with the way the result was Oscar Piastri. Points at your first race here in Albert Park. That has got to feel great.
Yeah, nice to get my first points on the board, and what better place to do it at home. So, no, crazy race, but glad we could stay out of the carnage and get some points on the board.
Wild race. How do you keep your heads in a situation like that?
It's difficult. I think for me, the first start, the actual start, was pretty good, and then the other...
How many starts were there? 3 more?
I can't remember anymore. But it was good to get some first laps under my belt. So usually by this point, I'm only expecting 3, not 5. So no, was crazy. And I think, for me, I was P11 on the last restart that properly went going and needed to get a spot. But other people kind of sorted that for me in front of me. So no, nice to avoid the carnage and get some points.
And listen, we're going to let you go because I know you're a man massively in demand. Everyone wants to talk to you. But how's this weekend been, being here in Melbourne? I know it's the first time you've been at the race since you were a grid kid back in 2015, and now you're the home hero.
Yeah, it's been a great weekend, an amazing weekend. Something I'll remember forever, not just the race, but the whole weekend. And no, I think this time last year I was presenting this show. So nice to be here as a driver this time. Still really enjoying that. But it's been an amazing week, and can't wait for hopefully many more home Grand Prix to come.
Great stuff. Go and celebrate. Enjoy Melbourne tonight. We'll see you at the next one, man. Thank you so much. Great job. You did a wonderful job today, Oscar Piastri, another guy who had a hell of a race. Sergio Perez, Checo, great drive. Can we just talk about your overtaking today? Yeah. Because you pulled off some gutsy moves around the outside, up the inside, and at one of the fastest points of the track as well. How much did you enjoy that?
Yeah, it was a bit frustrating, really, especially that start with the double safety car. It basically meant that everyone was on the same tire, so there was not much of a strategy. And it was really, really tough to get by in the early stages. And I knew that there was my race gone, and once I managed to clear all that traffic, it was just a bit too late.
The 4 DRS zones meant that everyone was able to stay very much together, even cars which traditionally we wouldn't expect to have the same pace as you guys. How tricky did that make it for you?
Yeah, it was very, very tricky. We just couldn't overtake. at all, and it was really, really tricky. We didn't have the pace that we normally had. I think everyone was a lot closer to us today.
How much after a weekend like this do you just need to get out of the paddock, go home, hit the reset button, and go to the next one?
Yeah, obviously it was a really bad, very bad weekend. You know what happened yesterday. It's totally unacceptable. We have to get to the bottom of it, because that really, I felt like we had a really good weekend, and up to yesterday, and those issues. You know, we worked so hard preparing the Grand Prix, and then that just put us back completely. We lost all the confidence, and yeah, I think definitely we had the pace to fight for the victory today, but finishing P5, it's damage limitation.
See you at the next one, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. I'll take that from you. Thank you, Checo. I don't think I've seen many drivers that upset with finishing where he did today, which was a P5. And I know we wanted the podium. I know we wanted to be fighting for the win, but it all went away for Checo yesterday.
Yeah, I think it's because it's so critical for him now to, if he wants to fight for the World Championship, to kind of not halt or hold Verstappen. You know, I think if Max starts getting another win, he starts going, it's going to be really hard to then recover from the middle to the end of the season, because then obviously Max is going to have the momentum, the team, and everything. So I think for him it was, you know, I think in Jeddah he won the race and he had the momentum, so he wanted to keep it going if he wanted to really have the shot at winning the championship. But I know Checo, he's a fighter, and he'll bounce back.
How impressed were you with the moves that he was pulling off today?
No, he's great, man. He's always been an amazing racer. You know, not only on street circuits, but on normal tracks as well. And he's a real racer. You know, he comes from the back, he makes overtaking, he's aggressive, he's decisive. He's been like that his whole career, you know, like a Mexican fighter. It's cool.
Yeah. And the way they've changed this circuit, to have that run through from 6 down Lakeside Drive and having those extra DRS zones to enable the drivers to put a move on round the inside, up the inside on that sweeping left-right section. It was, for us watching, electrifying to see those guys doing it, particularly those Perez moves.
It's much better, because here usually the racing was so, you know, tight. It was so stiff. Nothing really would happen. But because from that section, from like turn 6 and then all the way down to turn 9, you get such a draft, because you have those sweeping corners, which you cause a little bit of drag by turning, which makes the draft effect, the toe effect, even bigger. So then you always get those overtakes, or the guy blocking into turn 9, some guy trying to pass on the outside of turn 9. And so it makes everything, a little bit more racy here at Melbourne.
Checo, of course, brilliant today. The mistake came in qualifying yesterday. We understand he braked so much later than even Max Verstappen was doing down there at turn 3. Had you expected him to be maybe a little more moderate in his early qualifying run than to go out and just put it all on the line like that on such a cold, tricky track?
Yeah, I mean, the track is very cold and it's slick, especially when you're out on new tires. Although we still have tire blankets, it is extremely slick. But I don't know what happened. I don't know exactly what happened, but I read something about his brake bias, or they were having brake bias issues or something. So yeah. I don't know if that's what he was mentioning that kind of, you know, disrupted their weekend. But I hope they're able to bounce back. Next race is Baku, so it's a race that he'll, you know, I think will be up there. So it's a shame he finished 5th, but he's still, you know, like you said, damage limitation.
A race that Sergio Perez started from the pit lane and ultimately finished in 5th place. That first race start, let's go back to that, take it all the way back to the beginning. Max Verstappen on pole position, George Russell alongside him, and Pietro George with a perfect start. Had that inside line, made the great start, made the move straight up into the lead of the race.
Yeah, that was an amazing start, and I thought from there, and then as well, you know, Hamilton going into P2, I was like, 2 Mercedes up front, you know, they can do different strategies and maybe, you know, really hold off for the win. Didn't end up going that way, but it was a massive effort, and I think Mercedes, they're starting very well. I think only the last restart that it wasn't fantastic, but the 2 restarts that they did on standing start, they have a very good start. Yeah,
absolutely. We see from the overhead when everyone's launching off, their launches were absolutely sublime. As you say, he led the race, then Alex Albon put it into the wall. Albon, who'd been having such a great weekend in that second section where he ended up putting it into the barrier. Mercedes chose then to pit George Russell from the lead. Again, a big roll of the dice, which could have worked out for them if they hadn't thrown the red flag on the very next lap.
That's the problem, because I think that's what happened with Kevin as well. the way the car looked on track, you didn't think that there would be a red flag. You thought it'd be a safety car, they'd recover the car, and then they'd restart. And it was a good gamble on strategy. You get the pit stop in already, and you're one pit stop ahead.
As George said, the strategy was great.
Yeah, it was great. But then the problem with the red flag is then you throw the red flag, then everybody who hasn't pit then have the free chance to put new tires in the pit lane. So all you did is you just shuffled to the back.
Yeah.
You lost all the track position. You basically went to last. So, yeah, just luck of the dice, I guess.
When that race restarted, George was on it, putting the moves, really pushing the car. In the end, a power unit failure taking him out of the race. But he looked like he was making his way back up to fight for those podium positions.
Yeah, because I think even doing that and stopping, I think he was still 7th at the time. So he still had, and it was early on in the race, he still had the, the time and as well the pace to be able to make it up and be contending, with Alonso or something for the podium. Although Alonso had good pace, though.
Yeah,
he started putting a bit of pressure on Hamilton. I'm not sure he would have been able to pass
He was just kind of holding it back, wasn't it? And then pushing. And then Lewis had a little bit in reserve, and he could push as well.
But they were close. I mean, Aston Martin are really strong as well. If not, Hamilton would have just taken off.
George Russell, though, made a great restart. As we were saying, those launches off the line for Mercedes looking fantastic. Made up some positions, pushing, and then we heard it through the final few corners, and then we saw it. And it's not often in modern-day Formula One you see an engine let go and flames licking out the back of it, but that was a big failure for that Mercedes power unit.
Yeah, I mean, if an engine's going to go, you might as well make a bit of a show out of it.
I don't think the potential penalties that stand in the way for him would will make him all that happy. But yeah, it was there's no question about what it was or why it was. But for George Russell, out of a race which he led.
Yeah, I mean, definitely from the beginning, it looked like it was going to go a bit different, for him. As I said, I think a shot at winning, possibly. Then had the red flag situation, went back, was shuffling back to, the front positions, and engine goes. What are you going to do,
What are you going to do? You're going to go and talk to Lawrence Barretto. That's what you're going to go and do. We can hear from George Russell now.
George, sorry to see you out so early in this race. What are the emotions after that red flag incident and then obviously the engine letting go?
Yeah, I guess when it's not your day, it's not your day. And pretty disappointed initially with the decision to red flag the race. We've seen, no words for that. Obviously, we had a similar situation in Saudi with the safety car coming out in an unnecessary circumstance. But I thought we made the right decision. Pitting, I think, was the right call under the safety car. I was surprised when I saw Lewis and Max stay out, and I was kind of pretty pleased when I saw that because I thought it was, played right into my hands. And then obviously the red flag ruined things, and restart was good. Would have been difficult to overtake Fernando, I think, but we were right there, and everything we've done this weekend has been good. Qualifying was great. The start was great, the restart was great, the strategy decision was the right one. It's just such a shame to be stood here right now.
I know the gap to Red Bull still looks sizable, but are there positive takes for the fact that it feels like you guys made a step forward this weekend?
Yeah, 100%. I think Red Bull's a little bit out of the picture at the moment. We need to continue to focus on ourselves. We've improved the car a lot, even though we haven't brought any upgrades to the car. And we've got to take satisfaction in that we were clearly the second fastest team this weekend. I don't know exactly how Lewis is getting on, but it looks like he's doing pretty well. But then I also take pride in the fact of the performance we did throughout. It's been pretty spot on these last 2 weekends in terms of everything we as a team and I felt as a driver we could have done, we did, and I guess that's what we can do sometimes.
Great, so thanks, George.
That interview, of course, was done while the race was still going on, probably about 3 hours ago. Now, of course, Lewis Hamilton did end up finishing on the podium. Do we think this is track specific, or have Mercedes made a step forward?
It's always hard to tell, but hopefully they made a step forward, because I think that fight, up front's going to be pretty cool if they actually made that step and continue to make steps to try to, be a bit closer to Red Bull. But definitely all weekend they had very good pace, in qualifying, almost contending for pole position, and then as well in the race also, and the starts. I mean, the starts are always important. I always say, qualifying is I'd say 40% of the race. The start is another 30%, and then the actual race pace another 30%. But having a good race start is super important because in Formula One, track position is vital. It's key.
And as you said, we expect now that Aston Martin to be kind on its tyres, to be rapid in race trim, certainly in the hands of Fernando Alonso, and that's what we saw today. But every time he started to cut that gap back to Hamilton, Hamilton had enough in reserve that he was able to pull it back out again, keep that 1.5, 2 second gap just comfortable.
Yeah, although this track, they made improvements in overtaking, it is still a little bit difficult because as soon as you start getting within a second of the car behind and you get that DRS and you're like a couple tenths away from a guy, you end up getting just that little bit of understeer in the high-speed corners, which makes you suffer and you lose the time again.
Absolutely. We could welcome to the show Mike Crack from Aston Martin. Mike, a P3, P4 for the team today, a phenomenal result. Does this feel real to you guys yet?
Yeah, it does. We wait for the final classification, obviously, as usual, but yeah, it feels good. I think great team effort today. Everybody was highly motivated, but I think the team did fantastic because we said from the beginning of the season, you know, let's keep things simple. Let's try to minimize the mistakes and minimize all kind of errors, and we just did that actually. I think with 1 or 2 incidents today, we were also lucky. We should not forget, but all in all, I think it is not. We did not steal anything.
Could have been very unlucky today as well, obviously with the contact on one of the very last restarts that we had. But Fernando drove a beautiful race. Lance also a very strong race from him. Pietro and I were just discussing the fact that when Fernando started to push to eat into Hamilton's gap, he was able to pull that gap out a little bit as well. Do you believe this might be track specific for Mercedes? Do you think they've made a step forward? And similarly, looking at Lance's pace compared to the Alpines, the Ferraris, everybody's seemingly on a very similar pace today. Was that due to the nature of this circuit with 4 DRS zones, or has the field tightened a little since the last race?
Well, I think, you know, the field has certainly tightened. I think the track has its part to play as well, or the circuit characteristics. But then I think the major part today was everybody fitted the hard tire very, very early, and everybody was concerned if we can make it to the end. And I think there was a large percentage of management by everybody. And then it is just, you know, who manages how much, and what we perceive as pace. So I would not judge too much on what happened on that tire over 40 laps today.
Final one, because we're going to let you go. I know you're going to want to go and celebrate with the team. If someone had told you coming into the season, maybe at the launch of the car, that you'd have 3 podiums in the first 3 races of the year, would you have believed them?
Well, I would have taken it, let's put it like that. But it would have been hard to believe, yes, obviously. Yeah.
Great job. Congratulations to you and the team. Thank you for coming on the show, Mike. Really appreciate it. And we can hear from Fernando Alonso now, a man who has finished on his 101st Formula One podium, does not continue the run of drivers winning on their 101st podium, but Fernando Alonso's always liked to do things his own way.
Fernando, congratulations. That was one hell of a race, and ups and downs. And what was going through your mind when you weren't sure whether you're going to get to keep that podium at the end?
Sure, it was very confusing, and yeah, a roller coaster of feelings and emotions going on. But yeah, at the end, obviously the P3 and P4 feels good for the team, and good points. And it was not an easy race. I think matching the pace of Mercedes was not easy. Also Ferrari and Alpine, they were putting some pressure behind me. So yeah, I tried to force a mistake from Luis all race long, tried to get close, but you know, he drove fantastically well as a champion he is, and no mistakes. I only remember one lock-up in 10:13 in 58 laps, so yeah, it was not possible today to put pressure, but we take P3.
It continues a great run of form for you and for the team. 3 different races, 3 great performances is enough to make you feel like you're going to be in this fight all year?
I hope so. I think it's going to be now a race of developing the car off track. You know, I think now when we go back to Europe, we will see the first upgrades for everyone, and we may change a little bit how competitive we feel, maybe for good or for bad. So let's see.
All right, thanks.
Great to hear from Fernando Alonso. Now we've heard from Mike Crack and the team perspective down at Aston Martin. We've heard from Fernando Alonso and George Russell. Why don't we hear from Toto Wolff at Mercedes, having seen his driver Lewis Hamilton back on the podium, both of his drivers leading the race. How's his day been in Australia?
Toto Wolff, mixed emotions I can imagine for Mercedes. We'll start with the slightly better news. Lewis Hamilton P2. For a team like Mercedes, so used to winning, for a driver like Lewis, so used to winning, how does that P2 rank?
Yeah, it's good because we got it on merit. I think we made a big step in terms of car performance, and it's great to see Lewis back up there. And you see, if he's a competitive car, he's just really great. And it's a shame for George also because with the bold stop with it, I think he could have raced at the very front.
Yeah, I mean, that was such a bold gamble. Carlos Sainz doing the same, but it could have worked had there not been, of course, the red flag that came in. Was that a strategy you'd spoken about before? You'd gone into the race with that very clear objective?
No, I think we just called it based on previous experiences. I think these red flags are good for the entertainment factor and something that for sure is mega. We didn't expect it to be so often, but maybe that's the new way, and as long as everybody knows, that's fine.
And then for George, obviously a PU issue. I'd imagine it's pretty early days to have got to the bottom of what went on there. Have you spoken to engineers or to George about exactly what happened?
Yeah, again, it's a shame for him, but it was a big bang with bits flying around. So it was, we need to sort it out, but definitely not one of those small little things.
And it was a very, very happy Lewis Hamilton at the end. Have you managed to speak to him yet? I guess he enjoyed his podium.
Yeah, I saw him before the last lap. So yeah, super happy.
Of course, because you had to get out of the car and get back in. And finally, do you feel this progress, this positivity that we've seen here at this track is track specific, or is this a sign of positive progress moving ahead?
Well, I think it's for sure track specific that we were looking better than before because we didn't change the car a lot, but maybe we've learned a little bit about setups and we're going to see in Baku and Miami, because only in Imola we're going to bring the new kit.
All right, thank you very much. Well done, and commiserations today.
Thank you.
Bit of both. Thanks, Toto.
Yeah, day of two halves for Mercedes. As Laura says, congratulations and commiserations. And Toto making it clear in no uncertain terms that what were once the internals of George Russell's power unit are now externals of George Russell's power unit. A very big bang. There could have been a very different result today, Pietro, because on that restart, that very final restart, some question marks over whether Max Verstappen was in his grid box or was a little too far forward in his grid box. And this has been a big topic of debate over the opening races. They widened the grid boxes for this weekend. They haven't lengthened them, though, and Max Verstappen appeared to have at least part of his nose and front wing over that front line. Did you see that?
Maybe, yeah. But is it under investigation or not?
Well, we're not sure. I understand that the Mercedes guys had seen it, and they've seen it from a number of different angles, but they opted in the moment not to bring it up with the race stewards.
I guess then they had enough angle to see that maybe it wasn't.
As I understand it, social media has gone wild with it, as it has a tendency to do, and one man who goes wild about these kind of technical things is our man Sam Collins back in the studio. Sam, what do you make of it?
Well, I am going wild over a little detail like this, Will, and it's absolutely right. It did look like Max Verstappen was outside of his grid box, and this has been a story in all of the opening races of this season. So I decided to take a bit more of a detailed look at Max Verstappen, starting there on pole position. And sure enough, on this angle that was shown on the television footage, it does look distinctly like Max Verstappen is sitting forwards of the white grid box. But after a bit of further investigation, we've had a look, and it's actually a little bit of a trick of the light, a bit of a trick of the angle of the camera, but actually Max Verstappen's wheels, the front tyres, are in contact with the white line of the grid box, which is the important factor here. The regulations state that no part of the tyre, the contact patch, that's the bit of the wheel that actually touches the ground, can sit forwards or sit forwards of that white line. But the contact patch is just, by a matter of probably a few millimetres, fully in contact with the white line. So Max Verstappen's car is just within the regulations. He is legal. This restart stuff, was he out of grid position? It's not accurate. He was in the correct grid position, only by a matter of millimetres, and he nearly got caught out when that car lurched forwards just at the start of the restart. But as it stands, Max Verstappen, his car was in a legal position for that restart, but only by a few millimetres, Will.
Thank you, Sam. Now, we're going to have a little bad day, good day. Well, it's normally good day, bad day, but just the way that they've lined up the interviews, we're going to do bad day, good day. Pietro, a bad day for Ferrari. No points for them despite great race pace. Charles Leclerc, of course, going off right at the start. Carlos Sainz with that penalty at the end. A bad day for Williams after brilliant pace from them all the way through the weekend. But I think a terrible day for Alpine, with Gasly looking so good all the way through the race, and then ultimately the contact between him and Ocon not coming out of how anybody pre-season would have judged it, with those two losing it with each other. Just a simple race incident on a restart.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ocon had a, run coming out of turn 2, and then Pierre was just slightly swerving, to the outside wall, and then bam, they tangled wheels and sent both into the wall. Both guys couldn't continue. It was a pretty big hit. And they were both in a point-scoring position, so it's, really unfortunate for that team to go out that way, and I'm sure it's going to be a pretty interesting debrief happening right now, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Given what went down, given the penalty to Carlos Sainz, which obviously Carlos is still arguing with the stewards, it could have been a P4 today for Pierre Gasly in just his 3rd race with Alpine. As it is a pointless day for the French team and for both French drivers. Pierre went to speak to Lawrence.
Hey Pierre, for one lap that would have been an incredible result. Just sum up your emotions right now.
I don't have anything to say. I'm just extremely disappointed, and just want to remember the positive. We didn't expect to be fighting one Ferrari and to have Alonso in my sights for most of the race, so that's what we'll remember. The rest, I just have no comment for now, and I'm way too disappointed to be standing here and looking these guys doing one lap.
Can I ask you about...
I'm fine, sorry.
Lawrence isn't having much luck today, is he? Bless him. Some very disappointed drivers. Let's touch on Ferrari very quickly, because while they'll be disappointed not to have points, there's a lot of positives that they need to take out of this, surely, given that pace that Sainz showed today, and the fact that the tyres didn't just drop off the car, as we've seen on the first 2 races.
Yeah, they had good pace, good stability, low tire deg, in my opinion. I think as Mike Crack was mentioning, everybody went to that hard tire after the first red flag and was trying to do a one-stop race, so there was a lot of management. But if your car is bad on tires, you would have fallen off the pace pretty quick, and they held off. They had good pace, and unfortunately, it happened what happened after that last standing start, and they didn't finish in the points. But yeah, I think very good pace for Ferrari in the race.
A good day for Yuki Tsunoda. Looked like it was going to be a 4th consecutive P11 in a row, which would have tied the record that Michele Alboreto held in the footwork back in 1992. As it is, Michele Alboreto keeps that record because Yuki Tsunoda is 10th today. That's going to be a huge boost for AlphaTauri, who've had a really tough start to the year.
Yeah, where did they finish at the end? Where did he
P10.
Oh, P10, okay,
P10.
so he scored points. Because I think before that red flag, when they moved the positions back, I think he was right behind Nico, so it was like P5.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Still scored a point. Still decent.
And a good day as well for these guys behind us. For Alfa Romeo, again, they put upgrades on their car just as AlphaTauri did this weekend. Looked good in practice, came to qualifying nowhere. Valtteri Bottas, as Jolyon Palmer said in commentary, didn't even see him in the race, not once. Don't think we had one frame of him during the Grand Prix, completely invisible. Zhou Guanyu, though, managed to pull home a P9.
Yeah, it's strange because I was expecting them to be really strong. They went out in qualifying and just didn't quite have it. In the race, though, between Joe and Kevin, they were battling on for quite a while. But the midfield is so tight. If you're just a couple tenths off in qualifying, I mean, you're either P9 or P16.
We've heard from Oscar Piastri, a very happy man. His teammate Lando Norris will also be happy with a P6. I spoke to Zach Brown actually on the grid walk, and I said, what are your hopes today? He said, both cars in the points. He's got both cars in the points. Okay, it came about out of a slightly crazy situation getting Oscar up there, but Lando, punchy race.
Yeah, they were racing well. I mean, all race, in my opinion. I think Lando was always trying to catch and overtake Nico. It was kind of that fight, and then him trying to hold off Checo as well. There towards the end, but they looked pretty racy for sure.
They did, and we can hear from him now.
Hey, Lando. Well, I'm glad that luck kind of finally went on your side, and I'm guessing you weren't expecting
luck
this.
Luck wasn't on our side, just unluck wasn't on our side. I wasn't lucky today, mate.
Okay, you delivered.
I just wasn't unlucky.
Well, it's P6, right?
Yeah.
Considering the start of the season you've had, must be thoroughly pleasing.
No, for sure. Our best weekend so far. I said it yesterday. just because of all my comments and my feelings yesterday. It was, let's say, I didn't have my hopes too high for today, but actually since lap 1, the pace comparing to some of the cars around us, like the AlphaTauri, like the Haas was a bit closer, but I felt a little bit quicker. So I could race against them. I could actually have some fun and attack and have a bit of racing action. So a good day, P6, some reasonable points for us. Same for Oscar, to have him in the points at the same time. We just stayed out of trouble, which was the biggest challenge today, is avoiding the people locking up and causing chaos. So yeah, I'm happy the team have done a good job, and we deserved it. And
you head to Baku where you're going to get upgrades. This could be the start of, hopefully, the start of your season, really.
I mean, the season started a while ago.
Your season, though.
I kind of hate when people say it, because it's, it's the same for everyone. We should have been on it earlier, and we weren't. So I guess we've kind of tried to look at it in that perspective. We've been a bit unlucky before, and today just things went our way a little bit more, and we were where we deserved to be. But we have the upgrades. We have some things. Whether I don't want to get my head or get too excited about all of it, because I wouldn't say Baku is where it's going to help us the most with all such slow speed corners. But at the same time, it's a step forward, I hope, and the team have been working very hard back in MTC and here to get everything ready for Baku. So yeah, thanks to the team. They've done a very good job. They're pushing hard, they're working hard, and a day like today shows that it's paying off.
Great stuff, thank you.
Poor Lawrence, Lando shutting him down. It's not luck. And he's right. They merited that today. Lando drove beautifully. Team did great. Before we finish our bad day, good day segment, Nico Hülkenberg. Great day, raced beautifully. Hasn't quite had the race pace in the opening 2 Grand Prix, but really showed wonderful pace today. Punchy, competitive. I was really impressed with Nico.
Yeah, I think it was super important for him to score points. Kevin had the first point for the team in Jeddah, and I know Nico has always been qualifying well, but he was always a bit frustrated with how the races were going, always having a bit more deg in the race, and I think it was important for him and, to get him on a roll as well, to finally score those first points, and ended up finishing 7th, so that's 6 points, which is a lot of points for...
7 points.
P7?
P7's 7.
6.
Is it 7? Is it 6?
I think so. Because, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's 6.
But it's been a long day.
Anyway, it's a good amount of points. It's a good amount of points.
We'll figure it out at the end of the show when we do the classification. Right, good day, bad day, good day. Here's the classification. We can double check. Max Verstappen then, 25 points. Lewis Hamilton second with 18 points. It is 6. Pietro's right. Alonso third. Stroll fourth. Perez fifth. Then Norris, Hülkenberg, Piastri, Joe, and Tsunoda. Of course, it's 6 points. It's been a long day. Behind them is Valtteri Bottas, Carlos Sainz, Gasly, Ocon, De Vries, Sargent, Magnussen, Russell, Albon and Leclerc. Russell, Albon, Leclerc, of course, not finishing race. Kevin still classified as 6 laps down, despite, of course, not finishing the Grand Prix. We've done bad day, good day, bad day. Let's go to great day. Red Bull Racing. They march on. Pietro, 3 wins from 3. First time they've ever done that. Their first win here since 2011.
Yeah, and I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they can beat the most wins in a season again.
Do you think they can win every Grand Prix? And I say this not to sort of throw shade over the season and get people going, oh, it's going to be dull. It's the golden chalice. It has never been done in Formula One history. Okay, Alfa Romeo did it in 1950, but the Indy 500 was around with the championship then, and they obviously didn't compete or win that. So if we go for pure stats, it's never been done.
It's definitely possible. I can see that happening. Obviously, then you put into the account the reliability. That has to be spot on the whole season. But I do think, they obviously have the driver and the car to do it.
Let's hear from Christian Horner after their win here today. As we said, their first since 2011. Max Verstappen's first at this track, and the first 3 races done for the first time in Red Bull's history.
Well, Christian Horner, in the pre-race show, you said to me a win and P8 would be optimum, the absolute maximum you could squeeze out of this race. You have a win and P5. Max's first here, your second ever. I think that doesn't tell even half the story of this race. Can you try and sum it up for us?
Yeah, it's been a crazy race from start to finish, but we got the job done in the end. So dropping behind the 2 Mercedes at the start, and then George pitted under the first safety car that became a red flag. and then Max was able to hold position behind Lewis at the restart, and then picked him off pretty swiftly, and then was really controlling the race. And then there was another incident and another restart, and thankfully that restart, we made a good restart, and that was Max's race. So thankfully won for the first time since 2011 here for the team, and with Checo's recovery from P20 to P5 with the fastest lap was a great performance.
On the pit wall and indeed in the cockpit for Max Verstappen, what goes through your minds when you're told with 2 laps to go it'll be another standing start and Max could potentially lose the race from what was a very commanding position?
Well, it's a horrible position to be in because you're controlling the race. You've got 10 seconds in the pocket, and then suddenly it's a lottery start again, and so you can only lose as the leader at that point. But he kept his head and delivered a great start, and all the chaos was happening behind him.
And a moment for Sergio Perez as well. Some of those overtakes were unbelievable.
Yeah, you wouldn't think he had 3 kids. Looking at one of the move he did on, I think it was Kevin Magnussen.
Yes.
A great recovery, some really brave overtaking from him today, and he's always been a great racer, and he demonstrated that today in the fastest lap as well. So damage limitation for him. With a few of the rivals dropping out as well.
And clearly, if there was even a hint that yesterday would have dented any confidence, he certainly had confidence behind the wheel today as well.
No, absolutely. And it's a tougher track this to overtake and to get through the field compared to the previous 2 races. So he did a great job, and delighted with that performance today.
And Christian, we have a bit of a gap now. It's sort of an odd spring break.
An Easter break.
An Easter break. What will you be up to? And I guess the next race is Baku, which is often an eventful one as well.
Absolutely, in the first sprint race as well. So what could possibly go wrong? It's a chance to recharge the batteries. This is quite a brutal trip for all the teams. Coming out here for 3 days with a big time change. So I think everybody will deserve a mini break at Easter, recharge the batteries, eat a few Easter eggs, and then get stuck in after the break.
And you go in a very, very good position indeed. Thanks very much, Christian. Well done today.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
A very happy Christian Horner, and I'm sure we're going to hear now from a very happy Max Verstappen.
Hey Max, congratulations. Up and down race, quite tricky. I don't know how many restarts we had in that one. What was it like for you in the cockpit?
It was very chaotic today, a bit of a mess to be honest. Especially the second red flag, I think that was really unnecessary today. That could have easily been solved with a virtual safety car or a safety car at most. But yeah, we got that red flag, and then you basically create even more trouble because then you go out on very cold tyres, the safety car is driving super slow, and you arrive to the grid with stone cold tyres, and you could see everyone in turn 1 was having a lot of trouble, and especially the cars in dirty air. They nobody crashes on purpose, but everyone went wide or had a touch, and it was just very chaotic.
What was the car like out there? Did you feel like you had to be pushed from the guys behind, or do you have a lot in reserve?
No, the car was good on any tyre today, so the pace of the car was again very promising, even though I think on a track like this, there's very low deck. Everyone can push quite well, so then maybe we can't even really see the full potential of the car.
Congrats again, thanks.
Great to hear from our race winner and championship leader, and that is pretty much it for your post-race show. Pietro, what are you up to next? You're a busy man this year.
Yeah, so I'm flying back to the UK, and I'm racing WEC and IMSA this season, so keeping very busy. And 2 weekends time, I have next WEC race at Portimao.
Amazing. You enjoy Portimao?
Yeah, I love it. We were there a couple weeks ago. It was raining, but it should be dry for the race weekend, and we should be good. I qualified second in the last race, and we have good pace, so hopefully a podium or a win at Portimao.
Beautiful stuff. It's great to see you behind the wheel again, mate. It really is. And thank you so much for being on this show. Really, really appreciate it, mate. That is pretty much it from us. Thank you so much for tuning in on what has been the craziest of days. They say that Melbourne has 4 seasons in a day. I think we had about 4 races in a day. It may be a bit calmer in Azerbaijan. I wouldn't put your house on it. Practice 1 comes your way at 1:30 local time on Friday, the 28th of April. Qualifying will then be 5 p.m. because don't forget, it is a sprint weekend. Practice 2, 1:30 on Saturday, the sprint itself at 5:30. Then Sunday the 30th, the race coming your way at 3 p.m. and all of the usual pre and post shows around all of those. That, though, is it from here in Melbourne. What a race, what a weekend it has been. Red Bull have won the first 3 races of the 2023 Formula One season, with Verstappen taking 2 of them, and this one after almost 3 hours. What an event, what a race. Thank you so much for tuning in here on F1 TV. We're going to have a couple of weeks off, but we'll see you in Azerbaijan.
Was that a good race, or was that a good race?